everyone. I'll give you a second to get connected to sound. Hello and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 1293rd New Social Environment. I'm Magley, a Programs Associate here at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today for a conversation featuring Li-Ming, Charmaine Poh, Zach Feldman, and Chloe Stagaman. And now I'll introduce today's guest and host. Li-Ming is a multidisciplinary artist working with installation, video, and performance. Drawing on her experience in the entertainment industry, Hugh explores the relationships between cultural production and the construction of subjectivities, engaging with the imperatives of our high-performance culture. She holds an MFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, has attended residencies at the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, the International Studio and Curatorial Program, Flux Factory, the Wasaic Project, and enjoyed contemporary art space in New Zealand. She has exhibited and performed widely throughout New Zealand, Chicago, and New York City. Charmaine Poh is an artist working across film, photography, media, and performance to peel apart, re-examine, and hold ideas of agency, repair, and the body across worlds. She aligns herself with strategies of visibility, opacity, deviance, and futurity. Based between Berlin and Singapore, she is a co-founder of the magazine Jome and a member of the Asian Feminist Studio for Art and Research. She was participating artist in the 60th Venice Biennale, Foreigners Everywhere, and was awarded Deutsche Bank's 2025 Artist of the Year and the 2026 Via Romana Prize. Zachary B. Feldman is a curator, writer, and scholar of media art and is currently the curator of visual arts and programs at Goethe-Institut New York. He holds a joint Ph.D. in comparative media and German studies from Vanderbilt University and was a Helena Rubenstein Fellow in Curatorial Studies at the Whitney Independent Study Program from 2022 to 2023. He has guest curated exhibitions and screenings at eFlex Screening Room, Artist Space, and the National Gallery of Art in DC. And our host today is Chloe Stagaman, a curator and writer and director of programs at the Brooklyn Rail. And with that, I will hand it over to Chloe to get us started.
Thank you so much, Magley. And most importantly, thank you so much, Charmaine and Li-Ming and Zach, for being here today to talk about likenesses, speaking with the Selves, which is on view at the Goethe-Institut through December 11th now. And I hope that you use our conversation today as a launching point to go there and to see a lot of this work in person. It's really a wonderful show filled with timely themes and really important learnings from each of these artists. So I'm really, really excited to speak with the three of you today about the show. With that, I'm going to jump in. Zachary, Likenesses Speaking with the Selves presents the first pairing of Li-Ming and Charmaine's works together. I'm wondering if you can start by telling us a bit about connecting their practices in this way and what led to the development of this exhibition.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chloe. And thank you also to Li-Ming and Charmaine and Magley, but particularly for Charmaine and Li-Ming for joining at such odd hours for them. They're back home in their respective places. So we really appreciate it. The show came about in the past couple of years. I first encountered Li-Ming's practice in her open studio at the ISCP, the International Studio and Curatorial Program in Brooklyn, maybe about 3 years ago. Is that right, Li-Ming? Was that when you were in residence? Yeah. And I saw an earlier version of one of the works that I think we'll talk about, Deliciously Authentic, and it just really stayed with me. Um, and I was thinking through these ideas of artifice and performance, and I was also really struck with the biographical fact of Li-Ming's acting career. And pretty shortly after that, I became aware of Charmaine and her practice through her participation in the Proof of Personhood exhibition in Singapore. And I did a studio visit with Charmaine a couple of years ago in Berlin, And that was really the spark of the exhibition, the first time that I saw them together. On one level, you have two artists who have this pretty unique uh, biographical feature of having had television fame in their youth. And in addition to that, making work that responds to that. But on a deeper level, I also saw two artists who had experienced varying levels of loss of agency over their image, over control of how that image proliferates and how it's used and how it syndicates online and on television, and their practice, their artistic practice, seeking to reclaim that agency through techniques like manipulation of the image, reperformance, and using very different strategies, but ultimately sharing in that same goal to reclaim an ownership and a control over their literal likeness. And that was kind of the origin of the exhibition.
Thank you for that, Zach. And Charmaine and Li-Ming, I'd love to hear from you about the initial conversations that you had in the lead up to the exhibition. What was it like meeting each other for the first time, looking at each other's work in the lead up to the exhibition? And how did those conversations develop into the show that we can see now at Goethe-Institut?
Um, yeah, I wasn't familiar with Charmaine's work at all. And so when I heard about the possibility of this exhibition, it was wonderful to be able to access it all and take it in. And we do have a lot of, aside from being on television at a young age, we've also got lot of other things in common, like my family's from Singapore, Charmaine's from Singapore. We have some common research interests. But I mean, personally, I was a little intimidated because, Charmaine's really cool. But yeah, we I don't know, we forged a good relationship, I feel. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, for sure. I was so amazed that there was another artist who had such a weird experience in their youth. Like, how rare is it? Um, and that we were looking at this time in our lives, and it was uncanny as well because we both use masks, which we will get to later, and and so there's this kind of like um ability to laugh at ourselves, which I appreciate. And I think then as we got to know each other more, I think we spent a lot of time also just laughing at ourselves. So I like that. And I um, was really looking forward to how this turned out. And I think it turned out like in the best way. So yeah.
I have to agree. There's so much to talk about from the exhibition, and maybe that's a good segue to looking at a few of the works that are on view at the in the show together. Um, Zach, do you want to introduce the first work that we're going to look at together, and we can talk a little bit about it, and then we'll share a clip.
Sure. So I alluded to it just very briefly, but the first work we'll take a look at is Li-Ming's Deliciously Authentic. I saw this in Li-Ming's studio at ISCP, and it was pretty different back then. It's now in a I don't want to say the word evolved because that's not exactly right, but it's in a different format because of some of the public response to it, which then got integrated into the reimagined video piece. And maybe I'll also pass it on to Li-Ming to elaborate a little bit more on that and tell us a little bit about the arc of how it got to where it is now from when I had originally seen it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, you'll see that it's based on a series of commercials I did. But yeah, speaking to Zach's point, it was shown for the first time publicly at an open studio, and that's always a really interesting one where we were encouraged not to always be present. And so it is a really interesting experience watching people look at your work. And it can be, at, by turns both demoralizing and gratifying. It was interesting seeing people's reactions. And then, as I mentioned later in the video, I had a studio visit with someone who was quite damning about my approach, and saw it as kind of pandering to a certain kind of audience, like re-objectifying myself in a way. So yeah, it's a very self-reflexive work. That talks about itself quite a lot, but also, extends more to discuss like, you know, diasporic subjectivity and yeah, self-performance.
I'm going to go ahead and share it, and then we can ask a few questions.
In 2013, I was asked to audition for a series of adverts for Trident, an Australian company that sells Asian food products.
Dear Gail, I'm looking for a presenter to front a series of 15-second TVCs on Asian food. We want this person to be young, fun, and engaging. I think Li-Ming would be perfect. The TVCs would only be on air for a few weeks each at quite low rates, a mix of peak and off-peak. Is this something she might be interested in? Any queries, please let me know. Look forward to hearing from you. Cheers, Rachel.
I was given a script and headed to my agent's office to put down a few versions, with the directions to give an upbeat, engaging, fun, conversational delivery.
Hi Li-Ming. We are thrilled to have you on board with this project and think that your personality will really bring the TVCs to life. The client loved your second audition, and really, they just want you to be as natural as possible and just be yourself. In the interest of expediency, I thought it was worthwhile to pass on some feedback we had on your audition. We felt your body movement was quite jiggly, jerky. Sorry, I can't think of a better way to describe. So while it is great to maintain the energy and enthusiasm in your delivery, it would be good if your body language was more relaxed. I have attached the clip, and hopefully you'll see what we mean. It really is a minor point. As I said, we think you are great, and really look forward to working with you. Cheers, Rachel.
In 2022, I applied to an open call for an exhibition around the themes of mothers' kitchens, diasporic longing, and makeshift materials. I felt confident I could tackle the diaspora bit, and the longing part I could either ignore or manufacture. I started looking at some old adverts from my childhood in New Zealand, and then I remembered those ads that I'd been in. They seemed like an ideal material from which I could wring some added artistic content. Dear Rachel, I hope this email finds you well. This is Li-Ming here. I featured in a Trident campaign you did back in 2013. I was wondering if you still had videos of the ads I did all that time ago. I am now based in the US and trying to get a showreel together.
I'm going to stop it there. I don't want to, but let's talk a bit about it. Li-Ming, I was really struck by this work, and you started to talk about this a little bit before we shared the clip. There are many yous in this piece. There's the you in the original commercial, the you the commercial presenters wanted you to be, the you in the green screen overlay, which we start to see and which sort of recurs later, the you narrating, the you cropped into footage of Mulan. And this multiplicity allows the work to express trouble with itself, as well as to map the ebbs and flows of your train of thought. And I'm curious about those yous, like how they came about, how they emerged to tell this story and allowed for you to bring more complication to something that could have been a singular narrative.
Great question. Great reading too. Thanks. Well, first of all, I've always been interested in reenactment, in terms of how it plays with time, because you're already like straddling times, and I've also always been interested actually in the time of making and the time of viewing. So I've always, yeah, so that fed into my interests. And so having the different selves made sense. And also, I think because one of the things, hence the name, I'm engaging with is this performance of authenticity and also this demand of authenticity, which I feel is, I think it ebbs and flows through culture. And I feel now we're at like quite a high point where it's demanded of our cultural producers. You know what I mean? We have to be authentic to something, and it's often not really what the artist is, but what whoever's making the decisions or has the money does. And so this was also a nice opportunity to revisit and kind of address from the distance of time and from a position of more agency than I had at the time.
Yeah, you really feel that in the work. And one of the things I wanted to ask as well is that will come up again when we discuss Li-Ming's funeral, is the installation aspect of the work. It's on a TV screen, which, it's not projected. It's on a physical TV screen that's centered with shelves to either side and these sculptures that you've started making as well. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that practice and how it's expanded the work as well for you.
Mm.
Mm.
I come from an installation background. I've always loved the way it's kind of gives different layers to the work, different points of access that I really like. I also really like sculptures and physical objects. So this seemed like a good way of bringing them together. And the figures, the ceramic figures, are based on the AR like can and bottle characters that I have in the video. So yeah, it's just I feel like it's on an ongoing journey about how I integrate video and objects in different ways. Like this is actually quite minimal because I'm trying to be like refined and elegant right now. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it also kind of creates this feeling of the commercial display. It sort
Yes.
of situates the work within the context of a commercial display. And I love, one of the details of the sculptures is that they have these faces, similar to the video, like they have the faces that emerge from the labels, and there's this constant toying with people and the people who are at the core of these commercials and these images in this, against the products themselves. And those two things are really merged in the sculptures in a really interesting way and thought-provoking way, for sure. Do you want to say anything about that before we move on to?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you made, a good point, like just linking it to commodification, or
Right.
the commodification of object and self and how they are merged. So you covered it, I think.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I want to make sure we can look at Good Morning Young Body, Charmaine. Zach, do you want to tell us a little bit about why you selected Good Morning Young Body for us to look at next?
Sure. And in the layout of the exhibition, it's one of the very first works that you encounter. So as you enter the exhibition, you're kind of looking at the text, and immediately over to your left is Young Body, excuse me, Good Morning Young Body. This is, I think Charmaine will speak about it as well, but Good Morning Young Body is the first work that emerged within this larger body of work, which Charmaine calls the Young Body universe. And as I understand, this work was really an experiment during COVID, um, and playing around with the emergent technology of the time, the deep fake, and it's packaged as a lecture performance, actually, right? So you've trained a deep fake machine or whatever profile to clone both your face and your voice. From the materials from the We Are REM TV show that were streaming online for the first time around COVID time. And with that, I think you really lay out it almost reads as a manifesto. You really lay out the kind of directives that shape the young body universe. You talk about your own experience, and then it ends on this very positive, very uplifting note about representing all young girls who had felt this way. I mean, you're using your current, or at the time of the production of the work, that voice, your adult voice, but you're embedding it within your child body and your child cloned voice, giving voice to what you couldn't have said then but can now. Do you have any other words before we show the piece, or would you like to speak afterwards?
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Yes, what you said was correct. It emerged during COVID, and a producer on that TV show that I was on when I was 12 texted me during COVID and said, "Hey, guess what? Everything's available to stream now." So it was like initially a kind of a mortifying experience and response, and I had to maybe sit with myself a little bit and think about what I wanted to do now that I had access to all of this material. So it was just this like meeting point of timing and form and the story. And I had never really put myself and my image and my body back into my practice until then. So it was a big leap for me. And the script kind of came out in just like one day, and I didn't think too much about the process either. I do want to say that the deepfake is for the image, not for the sound, because it's very difficult actually to deepfake sound. You need really clear audio that has no background music. On a kids show, there's always background music. This is what I learned. And so one of the reasons why you practically only see I Ching's head in the video is because the deepfake is better with the face and it's harder with the body as well. So there were these technical limitations, and we can talk about them later, but that's kind of what I can prepare you for, I guess. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to share a clip from Good Morning Young Body.
Hello, my name is Ching. I Ching, to be exact, like email. I wonder if my creators had decided on this as some allusion to cyberculture. After all, I was written into existence not long after The Matrix and Y2K and all. But I'm probably giving them too much credit. In reality, it was more likely a whitewashing of the Chinese character I, which has a variety of meanings, from one to decisive to justice. Justice. I like that. Some would call me exactly that, a purveyor of justice. Well, to little kids at least, especially if you were born in the 90s in Singapore. You see, I was created to fight crime before dinner time. That I did pretty well, at least according to what was on television. What I wasn't able to fight as well was the vitriol hurled at me on the World Wide Web, than the vast, unexplored and unregulated terrain. Anonymity ruled, so did the language of toxic masculinity, and I had no platform of my own to fight back. Nowadays, they call it online harassment, or the catchier, cyberbullying. Singapore's Protection from Harassment Act, known as the POHA, only came into effect in 2014. In 2002, I didn't have the words. All I knew was that there were these comments on internet forums by people now known as trolls or haters who would dissect my young body like a piece of flesh. Actually, I think it was also about the lack of flesh, considering they often talked about my lack of breastage. What is the feeling when, as a 12-year-old, you realize that the two small mounds on your chest are now given public attention? Is it mortification? Send me your suggestions in the comments. Aside from breasts, they also had an issue with the shape of my head. I believe I was called a peanut. Basically, I was ugly.
Charmaine, this work is really filled with interesting information and references in its structure, as well as in the information that it shares about your experience. My first question relates to the structure as this sort of glitchy pedagogical broadcast. It really feels related to your own experience with journalism and international studies and the way that we receive and think about information, and becomes this really interesting and playful way to play with this image that's suddenly streaming during COVID, and that you're grappling with, but also with how we receive and think about information of this kind and internalize structures about cyberbullying, about harassment, and about how to consider those things within our online lives. And I'm curious about how you came to this particular type of broadcast format or lecture format, as Zach said, and when that arose as the way that you were going to approach this subject.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the approach came quite intuitively. I don't think I really questioned it, which is odd because it's not like I watched a lot of broadcast news, but um, yeah, I think it just came about because it was so ironic, right? This image of the 12-year-old girl addressing a large audience as though she were in a position of authority, and I wanted to play with that. Um, and I think it worked because there were some people who saw it in Singapore and felt like the avatar was lecturing them and scolding them, and I think they took it personally. And I was like, I think that's a reflection on you because this whole format is the point. And what does that say if people take offense to a 12-year-old avatar saying things that she's not meant to say in real life, or that she wouldn't say in real life because she wouldn't have this authority? So I thought it was interesting as a format, and it created some tension, which I appreciate also. Yeah.
It definitely creates tension, and there's this refrain that comes up in the work as well as in Public Solitude of "I am pixel flesh, code bone, 12 immortal." I wonder if you can tell us about that refrain.
Yes, for sure. I think when I first um, finished the video and really considered what I was doing with this character and the footage, it was a collapsing of time that was so uncanny and special. And um, I think that that kind of like unlabeledness and something that is beyond grasp was very interesting for me to play with. And so I I wanted to maybe perform or gesture towards a kind of freedom that can exist when you cannot be fully contained. And I think this character, I Ching, can't really fully be contained. Um, yeah.
It's also notable to me that she is 12 and is inextricably linked with the you that was presented and continues to be presented in We Are REM. And with that image, it's not that you're inserting your contemporary self into the broadcast, but instead using deepfake, you're revisiting your 12-year-old self, and your 12-year-old self is this agent. Can you talk a bit about developing the character of I Ching with deepfake technology, what that was like for you?
It was strange because you have to perform like a 12-year-old again, and embody those gestures and the uh, body language that you thought you have forgotten. Because I stopped acting, right? When I went to university, and it had been a while since I had tried to revisit the past. So it definitely was bizarre, but then also what was bizarre was that it also came out pretty quickly. So I guess I didn't forget everything. Um, and yeah, I maybe I felt braver because I knew that there would be a deep fake, a skin. There was a kind of armor I saw as an armor, which is also very, very different from most people because of this kind of deep fake gender violence that's happening to a lot of people now, and especially young girls, um, who are at the are recipients of this. So yeah, and it's also yeah, it's a bit odd to witness how the project, and because it's out there in the world as a piece of content, and not everybody's going to engage with it as a form of contemporary art. There are going to be people who engage with it within the context of the show and from what they remember. The references to the video and the work have landed up on the same sites that perpetuate these violences. So it's a kind of risk, to do that when you've had this past. But I kind of told myself that, well, if first of all, I have the right to do that to my own body. I'm not going to use another character um, or another person's body. And I feel like I want to make this point. And secondly, then every work that comes out of this series, the Young Body Universe, should make people feel a little bit uncomfortable if I'm going to use my body. So that was the kind of deal I made with myself. Yeah. So I went on for a while.
Not at all. That was really valuable for us to learn. I have a question for both of you. I noticed in both of these works that we just looked at that there's this outside multi-cacophonous voice that plays a certain part in both of these works. In your work, Li-Ming, the commissioning agent Rachel from Trident speaks in this voice, as does the narrator when reiterating the phrase, "Nobody made me do it." And in Good Morning, Young Body, this voice happens from time to time in the narration as well. When I Ching says that her treatment in 2002 wasn't fair, a collective voice emerges saying, yes, it wasn't. People should have protected us, and then reads from Legacy Russell's Glitch Feminism. And I wonder about this collective voice, what role it plays for each of you in the work and how it puts the work in conversation with either an external or internal pressure, but also with maybe yourself across a different time continuum.
Yeah, it's interesting when you like made that differentiation between the self and then society or whatever. Um, because getting like psychoanalytical, but those things merge all the time,
So true.
right? And yeah, I'm interested in that, like just even as an artist in general, or making something for the public, how easy it is for you to lose your own perspective when you have these perceived demands, and those perceived demands can come from some reality, but they can also come just from yourself. Um, so yeah, I think I guess I guess here it wasn't super collective, I feel. Like, yeah, I mean the voice of Rachel, I guess like the voice of the institution, right? Or the voice of the client. And the narrator was like one of the me's. So yeah, it's just, I guess, not only bringing different voices in, but different kinds of like self-reflection. Wow.
And for me, I just wanted to be my own God. That was really where it came from, um, um, and I thought it would be funny. I don't know if people find it funny, but when I made it, I found it funny.
It definitely has an element of humor, and that's actually a really good segue to how you both use humor in your work, and the role humor plays in the revisiting and the reimagining that you both do. Was humor always part of your work, or was it something that developed at a certain point for both of you?
Oh, I know for me that only emerged with this project because I felt like I could make fun of myself and laugh at myself. And I wanted to, but with other work, so I mean, I still work a lot with other communities, people using some kind of documentary medium or experimenting with it, um, or archives. So it's a very different tone that I take when I work with what I think of as worlds that I would hold or make space for. And so that's why I was also so different when I started making Good Morning Young Body. And it was during a residency, and I didn't think anyone would see it actually. So it wasn't really made with, New York in mind, not at all.
Yeah, it's funny, Charmaine, you saying that, or the thought that no one's going to see it, because that is immensely freeing. And I think the fact that I still have like a fairly like niche audience has given me immense freedom. Although, like for example, like one larger gallery in New Zealand didn't want to show Deliciously Authentic, right? Because it is engaging with a company that's still in existence. And the same with Short in the Street. I can show that in New York and it be zero worries. When I show it in New Zealand, where it's a bit of a national institution, it gets a little more risky. Back to humor, yeah, I've always used it. I just enjoy it. I also feel that it provides a really great access point for audiences. Like at the beginning when I was using cardboard masks and I was very much poking fun at a niche kind of arts community in Auckland. On one level, that only a few people would get that, but then I saw people who had no familiarity with it, like laughing and smiling, which I also enjoyed because maybe they might want to know more about who that person was, maybe not. I also think it's important. I'm always laughing and making fun and being a clown. And making fun of other people. Um, but as Charmaine was talking, I don't have that same sense of responsibility. Although, yeah, anyway, different story. And I just think also like the carnivalesque has also been a really important touchstone for me. You know, the subversive potential of humor and the subversive potential of being kind of like abject and almost scatological. Um, yeah, like there's a positive fantasy element that humor can bring that I really enjoy.
You really feel it in the show, threaded throughout all of your work. And it really comes across throughout. I want to make sure we can talk about the two pieces in the show that were made this year. Li-Mei's Funeral and A is for Andra. Zach, do you want to talk about both of these works and then we can talk a little bit about them and then discuss a few last questions together?
Yeah, absolutely. So I knew pretty early on in this exhibition that we wanted to highlight both these bodies of work that represent at least this one thread of both Charmaine and Li-Ming's practice, and to hopefully offer the opportunity for them to present something new or something that was in process that was going to be finished. So we were able to offer both artists finishing grants to produce two new works that are included in the exhibition, as well as a performance commission, which we'll show towards the end and speak a bit more on later. But the first work that we'll view partially here is Li-Ming's funeral, or sorry, Li-Mei's funeral from Li-Ming. which is again a video piece with some sculptural installation. Um, it's shown on a pretty niche monitor that some people have a bit of a cult love for. It's a 4:3 flat screen monitor that would be contemporaneous with around the time that the Shortland Street featuring Li-Ming is like it would have been commercially available around that time. So it's meant to kind of evoke some feelings of that like early 2000s, mid 2000s nostalgia. It also presents some sculptural installation that that evokes a kind of a funeral offering or a kind of a shrine. It's hung a little bit lower to the ground, also to evoke that even further. And yeah, I'll pass it on to Li-Ming in case she wants to say a couple more words before we show the clip.
I think you could just, yeah, go ahead and show it and we can talk about it afterwards.
This is weird. Yet, hard to believe why we're here.
It's so sudden.
What am I meant to do with Li-Ming's things? The house is full of them.
Ask Jiao, he grew up with her, he'll know.
Oh, cool. I have to take this, excuse me. Greetings, everyone, and thank you all for coming. My name is Chao Yil, and I've known Li-Ming since we were children. In fact, I was betrothed to marry her before she met Norman, the love of her life. Today's service is for friends here to say goodbye. Tonight, I'll travel with her back to her family and her village. Before I ask Chris to speak, I would like to introduce you to Li-Ming's good friend, Wing. Li-Ming's mother wanted you to hear a traditional Chinese lullaby that Li-Ming loved as a little girl.
Li-Ming, this work really presents a chance to revisit a scene from Shortland Street. It evokes, you know, when I think about soap operas, characters are so often killed off very suddenly in the history of soap operas, and that was the case here. Can you tell us a little bit about the original funeral scene, and then when you got the idea to reimagine it this way, and what that was like?
Okay, so I had always wanted, Wing is a Hong Kong, New Zealand singer, and she was very present in culture at the time. And right at that moment, I really did want her to sing at my funeral. I mean, it was a little bit, I guess, of a troll to the producers. But if they ended up not going with it. Surprise, surprise. Like I even wrote to Wing and she was like interested. And so instead they got a friend of mine from my village back home to sing this traditional Chinese song. And, you know, and so yeah, it was for me the opportunity to put these two like public portrayals of like diasporic subjectivity together, mash them together in this way, was yeah an exercise that I wanted to do. You know, these ones that, you know, one that was one that was rendered palatable, not made by, you know, made by these writers and producers who thought they knew what people wanted, and then this other one who became famous but was also kind of like an object of ridicule, but you know was putting herself into the world the way she wanted to be portrayed. Yeah, so yeah, that was basically it, and yeah, just have some fun with it.
I feel you having fun with it in the work for sure. And I also feel I mean, music is really important in your work throughout. It's also important to your work, Charmaine, and maybe this is a good moment for us to just briefly talk about the role of music in this work specifically, but also in some of your other projects. When you're making those musical decisions and musical choices, what goes into those decisions, and what role does the music play in the work overall? Mhm.
Well, earlier on, the songs, they were usually pop music songs of a certain ilk. I viewed them very much as a material, not as a soundtrack. So I would get those very early on in the process and integrate elements from the song. So for one of my first songs was Kate Bush's Wuthering Heights. And so the content from that, I reenacted part of the video, but the content from the actual Wuthering Heights and was also folded into the work. In this piece, I guess to add to the carnivalesque element, but it really spoke to like a real. It was part of the reenactment, like there was actually music at the funeral, and so I used Wing's music. Like some people have asked, is that you singing? It's like, no, it's Wing. I mean, I'm personally interested in how people who don't know Wing come to this portrayal of this character. Like, what do you see? Is anyone offended by it? I don't know. That's an open-ended question that I'd be interested in hearing.
It also
Over to you, Charmaine. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I want to hear Charmaine's response to it. There's another work in the exhibition, Bony Phony, which also
absolutely.
Gets at that as well. Like who's singing, who's
exactly.
singing. That feels really related to this as well, or threaded.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for bringing that in. Definitely.
Well, I think for me, because I'm playing with media genres, the music comes quite naturally. And you will see with the clip with A is for Andra that we play with a lot of kind of advertisements and kind of a variety show format. And there are jingles that already come to mind, right? When one thinks and recalls watching these, especially when we were younger and actually even now with ads that come across social media. So they went away for a while and then they came back. So I think then the music and sound design choices were made to accommodate this and to replicate it in some way. Yeah, that's my brief answer.
Yeah, let's hear A is for Andra so we can see that one as well. I'll pull it up.
Hello, creatures of the multiverse. My name is Andra, and welcome to A is for Andra. Yes, this show is about me. #self-love. Untuk orang-orang Indonesia yang aku sayangi dan aku cintai, coba ada yang ingat nggak sama aku? Mungkin beberapa dari kalian tahu Andra Ziggy. Si Andra Ziggy teh geningan, itu teh aku. Emang nggak kelihatannya agak berbeda sekarang akunya. Suaranya juga kedengarannya agak berbeda. Mungkin gara-gara aku udah kelamaan tinggal di Berlin ya. Udaranya beda, airnya beda, apalagi makanannya, ya kan? Anyway, there are a lot of things I want to share with you today after a music video coming straight from the field of Grunewald, Berlin. Here is Bananas with Virgin Fuckboy. Enjoy!
Charmaine, can you tell us a little bit about your collaboration with Andra and how that started and how it led to the creation of this work?
Yes, sure. What a note to end the video on, huh?
I know.
And it
Cliffhanger.
unravels, I know, it unravels further, so it becomes something quite different in the second half. That's all I can say. Um, yeah, with Andra, they're a friend of mine in Berlin, where I live most of the year, and we realized too that we had this weird past. And they were also a rising star in Indonesia before quitting it all. And we decided to make this project together, and it took years. And also, they were going through their own gender transition. So the film became a kind of time capsule for these transitions. Um, so this is kind of like double time, right? This transition that is like a second puberty and also recounting their puberty. It was a really special project, and I'm so happy that I got to uh, fold it within the universe. So it's not just my body, but I could kind of bring it to another context as well. And I think in this case, because of Andra's very charismatic personality, I could use humor as well. Yeah.
I'm glad you said something about how the tone of the film shifts because it really has this beautiful arc. I mean, it starts that we saw the first few minutes of it, and it's really moving and touching and charts Andra's move to Berlin and their community and their friendships and their finding of their authentic self. And I'm curious how collaboration works for you as an artist, Charmaine, and how your own experiences being in the public at such a young age impact when you're collaborating with other people who have experienced that as well, and vice versa. You know, how working with Andra maybe has shaped the way you think about your own story too.
Yeah, thank you. I think that it's important to not rush. So this project has taken 2 years to finish. And I think it's always important to let people know that whenever they want to exit the project, they can, and that there isn't an obligation to continue. I think when people know that they have an out and they have the freedom, it's a different thing. I think I I actually went the opposite route because of this experience, being so front and center at a very premature point in my life. I think I wanted to hide behind the camera. So that's what I did for a long time. I completely switched and like never appeared. Um, so it was a way for me to maybe understand more people and understand more of life. And also, I found that it was very similar to acting in one way, that you slip into somebody else's shoes um, without having to deal with the aftermath of that, which is what a lot of professional acting is, dealing with the aftermath of that, not the craft itself. Mm-hmm.
That's a really interesting point. And I think that's a good segue to thinking about a question I had for both of you about the interview format in your work. Li-Ming, you present a work in the show called Three Interviews that presents an interview you did for a university, an interview for a convention, and an interview for a magazine. And really peels back the curtain on the interview process, which is something I'm deeply familiar with working on an interview program. And it also really gets at that self-reflexivity that we've been talking about since the beginning of this, and allows for you to insert, to type over some of your responses in earlier interviews and to be in conversation with yourself. And I'm curious, and this is for both of you. A is for Andra, also presents a kind of interview and a conversation in the documentary style between you, Charmaine, and Andra. How do you think about the interview format as a tool in your practice as an artist? And then also, how do you extend it to, your public life as an artist and things like right now?
Yeah, or maybe I'll use this for a work one day. Who knows? Um, yeah, I think that first my attraction to the interview format came when I was still at grad school and we were given these interviews with various artists to read. And because then I became interested in various artists, so I'd read multiple interviews with the same artist, and then I would see certain things repeating. And it was like, oh yeah, this is another arena for self-performance, right? I will repeat the things that I want associated with me. Uh, and then yeah, so the flip side of that was having the actual experience of the interviews. And how this is also particularly with video in conversation with like being an actor, and that you don't get say over the finished product because it's heavily edited. They yeah, so we see in the both in the interviews where I'm actually being fed, like I'm not giving what they want, and so they feed it to you. But then at the end, how you have no control. So yeah, it was nice to be able to talk back. But yeah, as you say, I've used this in other formats in my work. Yeah, again, it's just the arena of it's another arena of performance, I guess, but it's also quasi-documentary, and you can actually get quite a lot of information across through that format. Yeah.
It also feels related to revealing with transparency a lot of the devices that interviewers use. I was really amused by seeing the way you peeled back the curtain. In one point, there's a quiz show that is happening on the live program, and they fed you the answers before you did the quiz show so that you would know them. And I love seeing the interviewer's face when you said the answer, like on the show, and like the surprise. And I wonder kind of about that transparency. Like that's really interesting to me too, kind of peeling back the curtain on the performance as well and showing the various lead ups to the interview, not just the interview itself, but that preparation process and what that looks like.
Yeah, I'm very much into behind the scenes of cultural production in general. So like in other my videos, it'll show me like kind of making the work in some situations. Yeah, just try to like just highlight, I guess, that what you see is the result of a lot of machinations. And I personally am interested in behind the scenes. I'm interested in how cultural products are made. So that's also, why I go there. Charmaine, want to say anything?
Yeah, it's quite similar, right? I mean, I think once you've been in the machine, you want to use the machine. So it makes sense that we are interrogating it and using it as a device. And I think it allows for a more open conversation with yourself or with your collaborators.
Thank you both. I want to ask two more questions and then we'll turn to audience Q&A. If you have a question for Li-Ming and Charmaine, now's your chance. There's a form in the chat where you can ask us. I'm curious about the mask. You brought it up at the beginning of this. How does the mask work for both of you? Charmaine, I have a mask here of you. How do you think of the mask in your work?
How do you feel having a mask in your apartment?
I gave
Good
thought to
question.
wearing it throughout this, but decided to be me today.
Yeah, so the mask comes from the lecture performance in the Shadow of the Cosmic, which we performed at the Center for Performance Research. And I think what I wanted to do with the mask was to work with something really low tech. because a lot of In the Shadow of the Cosmic takes a step back and starts to look at the philosophy of technology and why avatars exist the way they do, why do people consume them in this way and then reproduce them, and what does it say about being in the world and non-being and non-existence as well. And so for me, having this mask was a very low-tech way to make people feel uncomfortable, essentially, was what I was trying to do, because I wanted to bring people into this space and have everybody consider the body. And this is, again, the wager that I made with myself. So I wanted the space to have a little bit of a U shape, like a crescent shape, so people would be able to see each other. But then what would be the response when all they see is this young girl and everybody is I Ching? And freedom comes when there's not one person to bully. Everybody is part of it. And I guess my desire is also for people who encounter the work to take a little bit of I Ching with them. And that was a very like almost rudimentary and playful and unexpected way to bring people into the headspace. That was the mask for me. And then, I had no idea Li-Ming was also using the mask. So it was kind of amazing, actually, because we we're both working with technology too.
Yeah, I mean, it was also interesting. I want to that we talked about with your performance at CPR that was different, I think, from when you've performed at other places, is that the audience was very compliant. And so what that did for you, because everyone kept their masks on, you said for the whole performance, right, instead of just the beginning, and what it was like for you to perform to all these I Chings.
Totally, yes. Thank you for bringing this up. So in previous performances, the audience was less compliant, and then so by the end of the performance, you would see everyone's faces. But then there is this very confrontational moment during the climax of the performance where I and the two performers look at the audience members and we maintain eye contact for a while. And actually, this time was a bit difficult because I just was looking at my own face. And so this turned out to be kind of an ironic situation where I wasn't as able to channel as much rage as I wanted to. So I don't know if I gave maybe like some secret away now. No, people.
I just thought that was a fascinating counterpoint, how it affected you as opposed to just the audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Similarly, I was attracted to the low-tech, quick and dirty transformation that a cardboard mask can achieve. And when I started working with them, I think in 2015, the technology wasn't there. Like even like for me, the access still, I don't really have the access to that. But it can be incredibly effective, like for a moment. And I was enjoying the disjuncture between, because I would have masks of people very different from me, like Hans Ulrich Obrist, for example. And so the disjuncture between seeing this head on this body and what that did. It's also, I think you used the word freeing, Charmaine. I found it very freeing at first because when I started performing, it was never as myself. It was always behind this mask and what could be achieved. And I was also interested in the idea, still am, of the incomplete pose, where the transformation isn't meant to be convincing. Like I'm not trying to pass in any way, but despite that, there are moments when I do. Yeah. So yeah, I love the mask. And as I've gone on, I started using masks of myself and then, yeah, using various like AR masking, like trying to experiment with it in different ways.
Thank you both for telling us a bit about that. I want to close with a question about your collaborative performance together, which we're going to share a clip of at the very end of this. Can you tell us a bit about that performance and about how you developed it together, and what it was like for you to perform together at Center for Performance Research?
I actually am not sure how we came up with the idea, but I just found it really interesting that Li-Ming's mother was Singaporean, is Singaporean, and then moved to New Zealand. And so Li-Ming was familiar with the Singaporean accent, but never adopted one. And um, and my accent fell somewhere outside of what she knew as well because it wasn't as pronounced. And so then we started talking about all of this because accents also are a huge thing for an actor. Um, and I think the conversation kind of then spiraled into this ridiculous kind of embodied experience. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything to say, Li-Ming, to add on.
Yeah, in terms of the accent, there's another layer in there in that we're both living in different countries, right? So we're both immigrants like me to the US and you in Germany. And the way I guess our accent places us socially and how people place us instantly. Um, and also how we've had to modify our accents in order to be understood. Yeah, so that was an extra layer to it as well.
And how did you decide on the captioning for it? The video that we're going to share shows your conversation kind of laid out as text. How did you come up with that sort of layout for the text and for your dialogue together? Which to me, I mean, unfortunately, I wasn't at the performance in person. I wish I had been. But the ability to watch your conversation at the same time that I'm listening to it was really interesting to me. And it felt like listening in on a very intimate conversation between the two of you, either over the phone um, or maybe even at a cafe together at lunch or something. You know, it had this very intimate back and forth. And I'm curious about whether that was intentional or whether that's just a result of your collaboration and how much there is between you.
I mean, we recorded it because we just to document the process, I think. And then it turned out to make sense. And we edited portions of our transcript and pieced them together. And I think we wanted something a little bit more sparse, right? So people could actually listen to our accents, to pay attention to our accents before we took the stage. Yeah.
Yeah, and also have a break from being seen in that way because we
Mm-hmm.
videoed it
Yeah.
as well. But we did make the conscious decision to just have the audio and the text, yeah, to kind of remove ourselves from it.
Mm-hmm. Because we were coming off the back of each of our performances, which were quite intense. Mhm.
Well, I want to thank you so much for this conversation today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I'm going to pass the microphone back over to Magli for the Q&A.
Thank you, Chloe, and thank you all so much for such a wonderful conversation to listen to. The first question comes from Anne, and Anne, I know you wanted to ask the question yourself. If you turn your camera on, I can hand you the mic. If not, I will read it on your behalf. I'm not seeing Anne, so I'll go ahead and ask. Anne wants to know, can you talk about the format you use to convey your message in relation to the traditional film and television?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. Can you talk about the format you use to convey your message in relation to traditional film and television? I can paste it in the chat as well, if reading it will help.
I think this question might be kind of directing towards the presentation of either like projection or video or like a television monitor. Is that, I mean, I'll say just a word or two, and then I think Charmaine and Li-Ming can probably have a bit more. But from the curatorial perspective, of course, there's the element of what the work requires. Excuse me, and then there's the element of what the logistical space requires. So, I mean, I talked a little bit about the monitor that we used for the funeral video piece and installation. But we use primarily monitors with just a couple examples of projection, and that was primarily due to the limitations of the space. But there was a conversation between me and Charmaine and Li-Ming about, well, what works on a projection, what works on a monitor, and the artists themselves had particular feelings about that.
Yeah, I think, for example, a video like Good Morning Young Body has always been shown with a screen. And I think that works pretty well for something that's playing off broadcast news. So these kinds of presentation formats, I think, yeah, are really important conversations to have. Yeah. Whereas for A's for Andra, I think I see it more in terms of like cinema or something that circulates a little in a bit more free form way. Yeah.
Yeah, there's this at the beginning of the exhibition there's a table with two screens on it. One is an old iMac G3 that
Yeah.
was the actually a prop in Charmaine's solo performance, and then next to it is a monitor with a DVD player and several DVDs in front. And so the DVDs we had this season from Power Rangers, on which Li-Ming was one of the stars, as well as a handful of episodes from Shortland Street. So the visitor was meant to sit in front and physically kind of go through. Again, it's about adjusting the contemporaneous technology to the time of the production of the work. And the same with the G3, with the iMac G3, we were able to load up videos from the video files from We Are REM on there. So the visitor can sit at that table and become the user of that media, and see kind of the source material from which much of the work in the exhibition is responding to.
I will say too, it felt like such an interesting and great strategy because you so often in Charmaine, I'm thinking to the fact that We Are REM was recirculating in 2020 after, you made it years prior. The internet doesn't carry traces of itself in terms of like when this material was made and in what format it was viewed at that time. And so it's really interesting to be able to see some of these works on television screens and on Macs of that day and age, and to feel the time that has passed in the same breath that you're rewatching some of the content. Looking at that Mac, I was thinking about like when I first learned to type in the in the 90s.
Yeah.
Something like that. It really takes you back. But I'm curious, Li-Ming, what you think too.
No, I think you've covered it all. I agree that table with the old media was a really lovely touch. And like Zach and I had a laugh about seeing children come in and see the DVD player and say, "What's that?"
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Daddy, what's this?
You realize how short the reign of the DVD actually was?
Mhm.
Yeah. But yeah, that's all I have to add.
It was also that kind of computer when I first logged on to these forums and learned that there were people on the internet talking about me, Web 1.0. And so to really sit at that space and to watch videos of myself at the age really brings me back.
Thank you all so much for those answers and that question, Anne. The last question, an audience member is wondering what everyone is reading.
What am I reading? Wait. feel like I'm reading like 5 things at once.
It's a little revealing. Like I read a lot of fiction. Oh, so what am I reading? This makes me sound good, I guess. I'm reading the latest. I just started reading the latest book of Prose Winner Flesh just to see what the fuss was about. Um, and before that, I read like the latest Philip Pullman novel because, and you know, so, but like to be my scholarly self, I've got a reading group and we're making our way. We're actually making our way through the ISP curriculum, Zach,
Oh,
for
are you?
laugh. And so we're up to Laura Mulvey's, which I have read because it's such an iconic piece, but you know, psychoanalysis in the male gaze. Yeah.
Yeah, as for myself, I'm currently in between books, but I just a couple days ago finished The Dispossessed, which I mean I should have read that a long time ago. What a fantastic book, but I've neglected science fiction for a long time, so I'm trying to work my way through some of the classics.
I just finished R.F. Kuang's Yellowface because she came to Singapore for the Singapore Writers Festival, and I'm in Singapore for a couple of months, so I heard her speak over the weekend. And I was more familiar with some of the other authors. I mean, I knew of her, of course, but not in terms of her work. And not having read her
I'd love
work.
to hear about that maybe later, but yeah, I avoided that book. I guess partially
Yeah.
because it's just what I'm interested in, but also like it seemed a little on the nose. But I probably should read it. Would you recommend that I read it?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It was such an interesting tone, I think, for the narrative to take. So I would recommend it. Yeah. But I also think it's like so funny that we're having this conversation now, and then I just read the book like 2 days ago. So it's a nice coincidence.
Amazing. Thank you all for sharing. That concludes our Q&A. I know you'll be closing out with a clip, so I'll give you all a chance to introduce it and Chloe a chance to share the clip with us.
So we already talked a little bit about what this clip is, but yeah, I'll share it. It's Somewhere in Between Asian and British is the title.
I'm quite good at accents. Like I can do an American accent, I can do a British accent, I can do a French accent, I can do a German accent. But when it comes to an Asian accent, I have a block, and I am not sure why. I think it's partially to do with, again, like childhood stuff where an accent was something to be ashamed of, where I was embarrassed hearing my parents speak in public. Because the Asian accent the Chinese accent continues to have very low cultural capital, I feel, in white countries.
So when you have to audition for a role and you have to do an Asian accent, what can you explain maybe the variations that you do? Because
Totally.
I wouldn't know.
I had a really bad experience where it was for something based, a TV series based on an anime, and this assassin had been raised by a French family from birth
Okay.
in Paris. And so I wrote going, hey, what kind of accent? And they were like, do whatever. So I thought she'd have a French accent, right? She was raised in Paris. And so I did it. And they were like, hey, this is great, but can you do this in an Asian accent? And I was like, what do you mean? What kind of Asian accent? Like, where? And they couldn't reply.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, Asian, just have like a bit of a sing-song thing.
Oh
And
my
so
God.
I just couldn't do it. And they were like, come back in 2 hours. And it was just terrible, if you can imagine, just a stereotypical, I think like Kanto, Kanto accent.
Oh my God.
Um,
I guess Cantonese is synonymous with the Asian
it is,
accent.
which is so stupid. But I guess in the past, that's where most of the diaspora did come from, right? Now that's
Yeah.
not true. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's actually so funny. What if like you taught me how to do a more Asian accent, like the ones that you've been asked to do? Because I've never tried to do any Asian accent, like any other Asian accent. I have no idea. I've never even tried to do it. Um, because why would I?
Yeah, well, why would you? I don't know if you get this in Germany, but are people ever surprised when you open your mouth and expect that you would have sounded different?
I feel like people don't really say much these days. Sometimes they just ask where I'm from. I think when they cannot place
Yeah,
what it is that's coming out of my mouth,
yeah.
or once in a while it's like you're English. So what's the first language in Singapore? That's the follow-up question. Or if I've already said that I'm from Singapore, I'm living in Berlin, and then that's when I know, okay, interesting that they picked up on this, because clearly if it wasn't a point of peculiarity, it wouldn't have been brought into the conversation by them. Yeah, that's usually the first thing that I encountered.
Because it's interesting, you just said your English before you went into something else, but were you going to say your English is very good?
I used to get that. Nowadays,
Yeah,
I don't get that more
yeah. People
as
don't say
often.
that anymore. Me too. And I think it's because people know it's not okay to say that anymore, maybe. But I used
I
to
hope
get that a lot.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to get that too, even from friends, like not friends, but people my age who I just met.
Yeah.
So not just older people, the older generation or anything. Yeah. But I don't. But I also have been told that my accent, but people who have never been to Singapore, they would say like, or they have said like, oh, your accent is a mix of like British and Asian
British. I
and
get that
Asian.
too. I get British.
Ah, really? Okay, yeah. But did you ever get British and Asian, like, or
No,
some
I've
kind
just
of
got
mix?
British. I've just got British in a straight line in New Zealand. It's like, oh, you kind of sound New Zealand, but you also sound quite British.
Because I don't always speak with a very strong English
You don't.
accent.
Yours is not very strong at all compared to my family's, for example.
Thank you so much. That was such a beautiful way to close us off. Thank you, Zach, Li-Ming, Charmaine, and Chloe. We'd also like to thank the Terra Foundation for American Art and Seeger Foundation for sponsoring our NSE program and making these daily conversations possible, and for their support of our growing archive, which you can view on the Rails YouTube channel. The Rail has been free and independent for 25 years. A donation directly supports our writers, staff, and operations. Support our work through the link in the chat. And if you're free, join us on Monday at 1 p.m. for a conversation with Reverend Joyce McDonald, Kyle Croft, and Sergio Besa on the event of ministry, Reverend Joyce McDonald at the Bronx Museum. And as is Rail tradition, you can now all unmute and say hello and goodbye as you leave. Thank you all so much for coming today.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Great
Thank
conversation.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
See you all.
Good to see the
Thank
show.
you for a
Great
great
job,
conversation.
Chloe.
On this beautiful show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Happy
Bye.
Friday,
I'll
y'all.
go to
Hey,
sleep
everyone.
now. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.